give in. This is our crime. This is our sin. But I still believe. I still believe. Through the pain and through the grief, through the lies, through the storms, through the cries, and through the wars. Oh, I still believe. Waves don't cover me. I'm turned and tossed upon the waves. When the darkness comes, I feel the grave. But I still believe. I still believe. Through the cold and through the heat, through the rain and through the tears, through the crowds and through the cheers. Oh, I still believe. This road, I'll climb this hill upon my knees if I have to. I'll take my place upon this stage. I'll wait till the end of time for you like everybody else. Woo! Faces that I meet, I feel like I want to go home. What do I feel? What do I know? But I still believe. I still believe. Through the shame and through the grief, through the heartache and through the tears, through the waiting and through the years, for people like us, in places like this, we need all the hope that we can get. Oh, I still believe. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, Seth, and I'm back with the Branch Brothers podcast. Let's get Rick on board and we can get things underway, shall we? Here we go. Good evening.
Ah, good evening, my friend. How are you doing today?
It's been an interesting day. Busy for a weekend. I went out, did some errands, dropped off some soda at a friend's house because it turns out that the soda I bought at the store was the wrong kind, and when I opened it, it turned out it was the zero sugar kind. Yeah. But she let me know that I can actually that the grocery stores out here let you return the cases and exchange them um, if it hasn't been opened. So that was nice. And then when I got home, I did the dog yards. And then I had to clean the garage. We have rats,
I thought you said you had mice.
mice, rats, same difference. But they pooped all over the garage, and I had to sweep that up. Um, and then I had to call the exterminator today, and I had to deal with their automated bullshit because God forbid we have real people answering phones. That's just too much money. No, we got to outsource it to the robots. So yeah, I'm expecting a phone call from the exterminator, the pest control agency tomorrow or possibly the day after. Hopefully we can get something underway. The rats are in the walls of my apartment. I woke up at like 2 in the morning today, and I heard like chewing sounds coming from inside the walls.
Whoa. Yeah, better get that under wraps then.
Yeah. Oh, and the rats
Uh,
also destroyed the dryer in the garage.
That's not good.
Nope, they chewed through something and now it doesn't heat up properly.
Boy. Well, hopefully you get the situation under wraps. I can go in more details about my plans on the next podcast because I don't want to derail too far from this conversation. But, I'm sure you have a topic ready for today, and so how about we get on to it?
Yes, we are going to be doing chapter 2 of Never Trust a Leader Without a Limp. Um, do you have anything planned?
Yes, I do actually. Today's actually a pretty interesting day in the church, and I'm just gonna discuss it because I went to mass this morning. This is the end of the mass, and it was such a cool topic. I decided to do today's presentation on it.
All
So,
right.
let me go on ahead and get on started.
Okay, let me turn
All
on
right,
the display so that way our viewers can see what you're presenting. There we go.
cool. All right. So, for today's presentation, we'll be doing it on the celebration of the dedication of the Lateran Basilica. All right, now, before we get into this specific building, we got to
Oh,
start with a very
you know what? I completely spaced on this. There was some major church news recently that we didn't go over.
what church news?
The whole co-redemptrix thing.
Oh, I'll talk about that after my after the presentation. We can discuss that there. But how about we start off with this fun little thing because there's actually some pretty interesting historical context behind this. So I just want to share that. We'll circle back on that point later. But
Okay.
with that said, let's get to here and we can get on started. So before we get to the crux here, we got to ask the question: what is a basilica?
It's a type
Well,
of building.
yes, but there's actually two uses for the name basilica. This actually originates from the Greek word basilikos, which means king in Greek. The first is the more recent definition is an honor given to the church by designation of the Pope. Two, which is a more original definition, is an architectural style based on the designs of the ancient Roman law courts. So we're actually going to go through the second definition first, go through the history of the basilica as a architectural building a structure, and then transition into its more modern understanding.
Right, because I vaguely remember, isn't St. Peter's Basilica one of the seven wonders of the world?
I'm not sure, but it would not surprise me if that were the case. All right. Now, let us continue. So first, let's go through the history and design of basilicas. So the basilicas were designed to serve as the place where the emperor's representatives sat and judged. So basically, these are kind of like the courts of like the Roman Empire in its early days. So essentially, how it works is they were rectangular in shape with a central nave at the end, which was a round area, which was a rounded area or the asp in which the judge sat. So they would sit somewhere around like here, and they have this area over here. And typically there were two side aisles separated from the nave by columns. So this right here is actually a breakdown of what your typical basilica could look like in terms of the structure and how everything was kind of set up. And then over here we have an ancient basilica from the ruins of a Roman city.
Neat.
And if this looks familiar in the structure, you'll understand why. We're going to get to this very soon. But on to the next part. Now we get to the transfer of the basilicas. So what had happened was many basilicas were given over to the church used by Constantine, as they were suitable for public celebration of the Mass. Prior to this, masses were typically held in very secret locations because in the very early days of the church, we were heavily persecuted by both the Romans and the Jewish authorities of the day. But once Constantine effectively Christianity the dominant religion in Rome, that's around the same time that they got access to these basilicas, and then these would start to be used as the places of worship from that point forward. In fact, many of these original basilicas survived, not only survived to the present day, but many new churches around the world are still made in this style. So if you're wondering why that design I showed looks familiar, it's because it's very similar to the structure of many Catholic churches, not just these great basilicas, but also of Catholic churches that are built even today. If anything, the basilica almost serves as the framework for what we know as the Catholic Church building, and by extension, the buildings of High Church Protestants that are similar to Catholicism, such as Anglicanism or Lutheranism, things like that.
Well, it really depends. The only Lutheran church I've been to is a very small church here in Alpine, and their building style is very contemporary. You can tell it was designed to fit like a very small community.
Yeah, definitely. I know within even the Anglicans there's some design variety, but even in there, but like there are churches within high church areas that have more of a traditional design. It does vary between where you go, but I know definitely in the Catholic tradition, this sort of set the frame for how the church is built. And we're in more details about different church shapes and sizes later in this presentation, but I think it's worth noting there. So, on to the next part. So, what exactly makes a church a basilica? Or more accurately, what are the key differences between your typical church versus specifically a basilica? Well, to put one thing right out there is that the Pope is the only one who can name a basilica in the honorific sense. So, the Pope will be the one who determines whether or not a building will qualify as a basilica. And how that works is the title is given to churches of either significance to the universal church, to a country, or even to a diocese. And there could also be a history associated with a specific church building, or maybe the way it was designed. There's a couple factors there, but the important thing to note is that once a building is or a church is named as basilica, it is a permanent title, meaning that it cannot be revoked. That from that point forward, it will forever be known as a basilica. So very very big deal whenever it does get that title. Now, to
So
put it
even
more
in the
simply,
event of a building being destroyed and rebuilt, would it still be the same basilica?
yes, effectively. As long as it bears the same name and is in the same location, it would still be the basilica title. Now, to put it simply, every basilica is a church, but not every church is a basilica.
Right.
Yeah, and in total, there are more than 1,800 basilicas across the world, with 85 alone in the United States. And as you see in these various pictures, these are different basilicas that are in the U.S. This one, I believe, is in New York.
That one
We
on
have
the
this one
top
in
left looks like a university.
I'm glad you pointed that out because much like Catholics in modern day, many universities actually took inspiration from basilicas in their architectural design. So there's that shared history there.
That makes
It's also
sense
fitting,
too because the Christians founded a lot of the big universities in the United States and the West in general.
yeah, and prior to the Reformation, it was primarily the Catholic Church. Now, post Reformation, there were definitely efforts done by other of the major Protestant churches, but before the Reformation, if you look to the western half of the Roman Empire or where those western countries were, they were most likely influenced by basilicas that were dominated by the Catholic Church. That's where design history kind of comes in. And then this brings us back to Rome. For in Rome, there are four major basilicas as well as a couple of minor ones as well. But for today's presentation, we're gonna focus mainly on Rome to sort of highlight this part here, which ties to our day, and that's gonna be our next part. So, what are the four major basilicas in Rome? Well, they are as follows. We have St. Peter's Basilica, which is this building right here. This is the one that's sort of the main headquarters of the church. And most recently, Pope Leo was actually announced here in this very building just a few months ago. So if this looks familiar to our viewers, this is why.
You know, it's
We also
funny.
have,
I knew which one of these was St. Peter's Basilica without even like knowing the names because I've seen the top one in like movies and TV shows before.
yeah, typically whenever they talk about the Catholic Church, they typically focus on St. Peter's because, like, that's essentially the effectively the capital church in the capital city of the church, so it kind of flows there. But this to that one, we have a couple others. So we have St. Paul outside the walls. It's this one with the palm trees over here. Then we have the Pale Basilica of St. Mary Major. That's this one over here with the clock tower like structure. And then finally, and this is the focus of today's presentation, we have the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran, also known as the Lateran Basilica. That's this building over here. And that's going to be the focus, really, of today's presentation of why we had this special day dedicated to it, which we are going to go into throughout the rest of the presentation. These buildings are also called papal basilicas and historically were called patriarchal basilicas. So there's a special connection between the four of them, play important roles in the church. But again, for today's purposes, we're going to focus on this one over here. So let's get more into it. So the first thing is, why is it called the Lateran Basilica? So it all started with the Lateranus family, also known as the Laterini. So this was the family that owned the property, more accurately the land, where this basilica was located. This was up until it was confiscated by Emperor Nero, who had accused the family of conspiracy against him. It remained in imperial hands for about 250 years until Constantine donated to Pope Sylvester following the Edict of Milan in 313 AD. This is basically around the time when Constantine declared Christianity the church, the religion of Rome, and was also when he started giving a bunch of land that the Romans had to the church for the purposes of, you know, spreading the faith to the masses, with this property being one of them. And of course, it's also known as the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran. That's the other name, which I kind of referenced earlier. And I'm actually going to dive deeper into this for our very next slide to explain it further. So you might be wondering, why is the basilica also called St. John Lateran? Where did the name come from? Well, it's actually dedicated to two Johns associated with our Lord. We have St. John the Baptist.
Obvious
This is
one.
Jesus. Yeah, that's Jesus' cousin, the one who baptized him in the water, kickstarting his ministry. And then the other, we have St. John the Evangelist. This is the one of Jesus' 12 disciples, authored the Gospel of John, the book of Revelation, several different epistles, and one of the big figures in the early church.
I feel
And
bad because I completely forgot that John was one of the was one of the apostles. Even when there's a whole book named after him.
I was about to say, how is it that you didn't know John was an apostle when there's a whole book named after him?
I don't know. This is Do you know how rare it is for books to have a character that has the same name as another character? The Bible is kind of an outlier there. When I hear John in the Bible, my brain just goes, "Oh, it's John the Baptist."
I don't get me wrong, John the Baptist was a historical figure, yes, true, but John
Dude,
mainly
did you
played the
know
role in
that
Jesus.
when it came like Joseph as another example, Joseph of Arimathea? I'm like, oh, is that Jesus' dad? It makes sense that he'd be buried in his dad's tomb, but no, apparently completely different Joseph, unrelated to his dad.
Yeah, there's obviously Saint Joseph, that's Jesus' stepfather, but you also have Joseph, who's the son of Jacob and one of the heads of 12 tribes of Israel. And then he would go and both the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh spin off in the larger tribe of Joseph. That's actually where that all comes from. So that's more biblical lore over there. But but this is why it's important to read the Bible the entirety of its context and not just certain verses in certain books, because otherwise you miss critical information like this. But anywho, if you're wondering why these two are associated with the church, it's because they became associated with it, mainly due to monks in the monasteries of Saint John the Baptist and Saint John Divine, who were serving at this basilica around this time. And to the left over here, we have the monastery of Saint John the Baptist. This one's actually located in Essex, England. It's been there since definitely the early days of the Empire, and it's still set into this day. And then over here to the
It's kind
right,
of bizarre looking. You have these great murals of the saints on this brick building. It's just isn't don't you find it a bit jarring?
It is a bit interesting design. I think this monastery in particular might have been renovated a couple of times over the years due to weather damage or what have you. We do have to keep in mind the Protestant Reformation hit England pretty hard. That's actually what got the Anglican Church, so there were some troubles with the Catholics in the region for a bit there. But eventually things stabilized, and now Catholics are able to practice peacefully in the UK, at least as of today. That may change in the future. Hopefully not for the worse, but we'll keep a bookmark on there.
Honestly, the
The
way things are
other
going over there, it's more likely that both Protestants and Catholics are going to have to unite against the common threat of Islam.
Yeah, we're gonna tackle that at a later point, but for right now, let's kind of stick to the main topic here. Um, but then the other one we have is the one St. John the Divine Monastery. This one's actually located in Greece. This was actually yeah, I think for a while it was part of the Byzantine Empire or the Eastern Roman Empire when the empire thing split, but eventually ended up under Greece proper, and this is the one dedicated to Saint John, the Gospel of John. So it was the monks from these two locations that were working that in the Lateran Basilica that ultimately caused to be dedicated to these two men in particular, both of whom again played very important roles in salvation history, particularly in relation with our Lord. All right, now with that historical lore all clear and established, we move forward to the next point, which is uh when was this building built? You might be wondering. So, essentially, after Emperor Constantine legalized the faith, he gave various imperial properties around Rome to Pope Sylvester for church use, which I kind of elaborated on earlier, but this is kind of how it all started. This building in particular, the Basilica, which you're seeing pictures of inside here, this various photos from that same Basilica. This was completed around 324 AD. It has been rebuilt a couple of times over the years, but even to this day, it has been continuous service as the cathedral or seat of authority of the Pope. So whenever they're having Mass on Sundays, they would have it in here. As well as the other major holy days of obligation or feast days scattered throughout the year. But yeah, when you're thinking Mass and the Pope, they would host it in here.
Ah,
That's just there. All right, now there's that. We got one big point, which is why is the Lateran Basilica important? What's the significance here? Well, it is often known as the mother of all the churches of Rome and of the world, which is also described in Latin on the basilica's facade, which is on the front of the building. It is thus ranked first and most important of the four major basilicas in Rome, and it's also the only one to be declared an archbasilica. Again, mainly because of the fact that this is where effectively the Pope's church. This is where the he hosts the masses, the major events. It all circles around here. So very very important in the both for the history of church historically and also where it stands in today. So very big deal. Now, before we wrap up today's presentation, there's a couple of things I want to bring up before we wrap things up. So we're going to start with this. We have another building called the Lateran Palace. You might be wondering, well, what is that? Well, some people get it mixed up with the Basilica, but to be clear, the Basilica is basically the Pope's church. That's the one where he conducts the Mass. The Lateran Palace, on the other hand, was originally designed as the Pope's residence. It was built around the same time as the Basilica, and it's actually located across the street from it. And for the longest time, it was where the Pope would live during his pontificate. That all changed in 1870 when Italy basically fully reunified and the papacy lost a lot of power. Pope Pius XI was forced to flee to the Vatican to maintain safety, and this also around the time where we got the treaty where the papacy or the Catholic Church would maintain control of the Vatican, but the rest of Italy would remain with Rome. And since that point, the Pope has actually remained papal residence is located within the Vatican City and not within the Lateran Palace. Now, they do visit the Lateran Palace from time to time before, but really since 1870, popes have not actually lived in that building. But to this day, it does have a purpose though, because today it continues as the office of the Diocese of Rome, and it's where the Pope's cardinal vicar for Rome administers in the Pope's name. So this is where they handle the affairs with the diocese, the other, not just affairs to the other basilicas, but also the other churches within the region, throughout that part of Italy, and maintaining things there. And
so
also, fun fact.
sorry. What was happening in 1870 where the Pope needed to take refuge in the Vatican? Like, why? What was putting his life at risk?
So basically, what had happened was because prior to the unification of Italy, that area was under control of the Holy Roman Empire, which kind of split lands with the Papal States, which were the different regions that were directly controlled by the papal authority by the Pope and by the Catholic Church, effectively. Then, the Holy Roman Empire, they had their split there, sort of formed their countries, and then basically what had happened was the people in Italy effectively wanted to have a republic akin to like the United States or like Britain, and so they rebelled against the papal authorities, wanted to establish their own country. And so there was some back and forth between like the people in Italy and the leadership who sided with the papacy. There was some back and forth there, and ultimately, because of how intense the war was getting at the time, the Pope ended up fleeing to the Vatican because it was the one of the most fortified cities in Italy. So it was a place where he would be safe in case something went south. And then eventually, what ended up happening was, in an act of truce and Thanksgiving, the leader of the Italian resistance force, when they conquered Italy, when they managed to unite Italy, they decided to make a deal with the papacy, with the Pope, that that the Vatican would remain under control of the papacy, that they can operate the church globally within that area, but in exchange, Italy would remain under control of the new Italian republic, which would govern the region. The Pope agreed to the terms, they made a deal, and the Catholic Church was able to continue operating in Rome without hindrance, but the people got their own republic. So essentially the best of both worlds type scenario where both sides got essentially what they wanted. Like, yes, the Pope did affect, the church did lose like political power over Italy, and they've been losing political power really since the Reformation by that point, but with that gone, this effectively marked the end of the Catholic Church like a political power force within Europe. But to this day, it still maintains religious authority within the Catholic Church, not just in Europe, but of course throughout the world. It is a universal church after all, and thus that's kind of how things kind of played out. That's actually why the Vatican City, even to this day, is considered a separate country from Italy, despite being within Italy's borders.
Cool.
Yeah, so very, very interesting thing there. Yeah, it did get a little bit of tense, but like I said, they were able to work it out in the end, and now to this day, the Vatican City and Italy coexist in peace. And it's been that way for nearly for about 150 years by this point.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's how it all played out there. Yeah, also fun fact, yeah, so the chancellor who rules over the Diocese of Rome, who handles affairs there, is also the head of the Pontifical Lateran University, which is also in that same location. So, yeah, once again, there's a tie to like the university system and the church and the schools. It all kind of blends in together. So, another way to kind of like that connection there. And now, one last thing I want to address is that relationship between basilicas and cathedrals. More specifically, what is the difference between a basilica and a cathedral? For those who are wondering, this building over here is the cathedral that's over in Washington, D.C. That's this building here. And of course, St. Peter's Basilica, this giant circle thing here. So, let me look at things first. So, a cathedral is the cathedra or chair of the bishop of a diocese. The reference is to the seat or the chair or seat of apostolic authority in that place. What that basically means that this is basically where the bishop rules from within that diocese or that region of the church. A basilica, on the other hand, as we kind of discussed earlier, is a church honored by the Pope for a noble reason, declared by the Pope. And one thing to note is much like how all basilicas are churches, a basilica may or may not be the cathedral of that particular diocese. So, what that basically means is that not every cathedral is a basilica, nor is every basilica a cathedral, but a cathedral can be declared a basilica can be a cathedral. They're not,
They're not mutually
it,
exclusive.
yeah, they're not mutually exclusive, but they're also not like one and the same. But yeah, that's just the gist there. Just to because I know cathedral's like sort of a higher tier church, but like the basilica's like I would say a degree kind of above that. So you have like basilica churches and then basilica cathedrals. It's kind of similar to the cardinal system, where like you have like a cardinal priest, but also a cardinal bishop and cardinal deacons.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so basically the only distinction between the cardinals and non-cardinals is that the cardinals sort of represent like the country that they're from within like the Vatican circle, whereas a regular priest or bishop, they mainly focus on either a certain church or like a within a diocese or just a specific diocese. It's part of the hierarchical structure that the church is kind of built upon. All right, and with that cleared up, that concludes my presentation.
Very nice.
All right, so how about we get to your book then?
Well, first, there is the whole matter of the co redemptrix thing, because I think we probably should talk about that, considering that's a big deal.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I did get a chance to read through the document that the thing was about. Basically, what the document was trying to do was basically all about how to communicate the role that Mary plays in salvation history, specifically towards those who are not part of the Catholic Church, whether it be Protestants or anyone else. What they basically said was that they encourage people, because Mary has a lot of different titles within the church. I think I discussed that a couple times before. But what the church recommended is that for the faithful, whenever you're discussing about Mary, um, it is recommended that you refrain from using the title co-redemptrix, and the reason being is that to the outsider, the term it can be a bit confusing and make it seem as if like um Mary is equal to Jesus, which in our teachings, Mary plays an important role in salvation history, but Jesus is the one whom through we have been saved, and he's the savior. That's his important role there. So the church is basically discouraging the faithful from using that very specific term because the confusion it could bring upon like the people and stuff. And like I said, we have other titles for Mary that honor and honor her role in the church history. So that's mainly what that whole thing was about.
Yeah. It's like,
Which doesn't surprise me because remember, even in the early stages of the church, from the very beginning, like go to Acts of the Apostles, even the church is one of the church's top goals in spreading the gospel is to make sure that everything is clear, right? That makes sure that people understand what the church does or does not believe, and communicate in a way to where those who are not in the church can easily understand what we are, who we are, what we believe, and why we believe what we do.
yeah. Hello, what's this about? This is our church podcast. Every Sunday we get together and we do Bible study or theology study. We do a bit of worship and just enjoy spending time with fellow believers in Christ. You're welcome to stay if you want to. If you're not interested, I'm not going to stop you from leaving. Um,
Yeah, welcome to the Street Peanut Butter Feet Party. Glad to have you here. I actually just did my presentation on the Lateran Basilica, which was, I think, of last. We talked a bit about the co-redemptrix thing in one of the documents that just came out from the Vatican recently, and now we are about to hop into the second chapter of Mr. Hackley's book.
yes, this is Never Trust a Leader Without a Limp, and it was written by the founder of the Vineyard Church movement here in the United States. Um, So, yes, chapter 2. The meat is in the street. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. John 13:17. One of John's best known phrases is the meat is in the street. One of my earliest memories after I began attending Vineyard illustrates the meaning of that sentence. I was working as a gardener sometime around 1977 or 78. My friend Chris and I took a side job one Saturday trimming trees for a guy in Yorba Linda. It proved to be a long day and hard work, but we made good money and at the end of the day wanted to celebrate. The nicest restaurant that was likely to welcome two gardeners still in work clothes and dirty from head to toe was Sizzler. A steak sounded good, so off we went. Not long after ordering, I heard a loud wheezing noise coming from the table next to us. I glanced over to notice three elderly people, two women and one man. The gentleman wheezed loudly again, causing several other patrons to also glance his way. Chris and I had the same thought at the same time, but neither of us wanted to say anything. We tried. We were tired. We were dirty. We looked like anything but ministers or faith healers or anyone remotely spiritual. After a few more wheezing episodes, Chris looked at me and said, "Do you think we should pray for him?" We began to develop a strategy, but the approach was simple. We just needed to go over and ask if we could pray for the man. Finally, we got up and approached the table. I said, "Excuse me, but we are Christians and believe God can heal people. We were wondering if possibly it would be okay to pray for you." The gentleman looked a bit bewildered, but his wife immediately responded, "Oh yes, please do." And so, in Sizzler, with a number of customers looking on, two scraggly, dirty gardeners laid hands on an elderly man and began to ask the Lord to heal him. After a few minutes, during which the wheezing stopped, we concluded our prayer and thanked the group for letting us pray. The other woman, who I learned was his wife's sister, tugged on my sleeve and said, "Pray for her too. She's got the arthritis real bad." I looked directly at the woman. "Is that true?" She sheepishly nodded, and I said, "Okay, we're going to pray for you too." She nodded again, and we began to pray. After a few minutes, we concluded our impromptu prayer time, thanked the precious folks, and went back to our steak dinner. I don't know what that man's condition was, or if he was ultimately completely healed. I never saw him after that night. What I do know is that for the remainder of our time in the restaurant, the wheezing had stopped. I also know that those people felt loved and encouraged, and that Chris and I experienced the joy of the Lord that comes from being obedient and allowing Him to use us for His kingdom purposes. The phrase "the meat is in the street" originated after a worship service at the Anaheim Vineyard, when a woman approached John and asked, "When are we going to get into the meat?" He politely replied, "Excuse me." "You know," she continued, "the meat of the world. When are we going to get into the meat?" John replied, "The meat is in the street." While this is a catchy little phrase, "the meat is in the street" also summarizes what John considered the Bible's greatest value for daily living. He believed that we were to read the Word, study the Word, meditate on the Word, memorize the Word, and put it into practice. The Vineyard began during a time when the evangelical church in America placed considerable emphasis on knowing the Word of God. Spirituality was often measured by how many Bible studies a week a person went to. Knowing the Word was the goal, and an end in and of itself. John's position was that knowing the Word wasn't enough, that Scripture meant something only when a person put it into practice. Hence, the meat is in the street. This is referring, of course, to the passage in 1 Corinthians 3, in which Paul told the church that they were mere infants in spirit, not yet ready for solid food, so he gave them milk. Paul was referring to their behavior, their actions. They weren't living out the things they had learned. The same is true of the corollary passage in Hebrews 5. The Hebrew church hadn't learned to distinguish good from evil. Apparently, Paul and the writer of Hebrews agreed with John. The meat of the depth of the word is in the application to our lives. God's desire for his people is that the body of Christ, would be the continuation of Jesus and his ministry in the world. He never intended for us to simply know the Word. He intends for us to live the Word. Our very purpose is to carry out the words and works of Jesus wherever we live. It doesn't have the same ring to it, but it's worth mentioning that the phrase isn't "the meat is in the church," it's "in the street." If our entire Christian experience consists of going to worship, attending Bible study, and fellowshipping with our brethren, we will also miss out on the meat, the solid food of the Word. Jesus instructed his followers to make disciples of all nations, Matthew 28. In Acts 1, his instructions are to be witness in Jerusalem, where they were currently, then go to Judea, Samaria, and ultimately to the ends of the earth. Just as the Word isn't intended to be only learned and studied, the outworking isn't intended only for the confines of the Christian community. One of the things I've always appreciated about the Vineyard is that from the onset, the focus has always been on getting out of the building and taking the aroma of Christ to the world around us. In 1982, my wife and I were part of a team sent out by the Anaheim Vineyard to Johannesburg, South Africa, to plant the first Vineyard Church in South Africa. Actually, anywhere on the continent of Africa. We ultimately spent almost 2 months there, but for the first several weeks, our job was to meet people. To meet people, make friends, and talk to them about Jesus. This was, and I don't say this often, a life-changing experience. We learned to get out and intentionally share our faith, to take what we believed and live it out in real life situations. My wife, Donna, met a woman named Leah who had suffered from anorexia nervosa throughout much of her young life. As we got to know Leah and her friends, opportunities presented themselves to minister to her, to share the love of Christ and pray for her. After a few weeks of simply living the meat in the street, we were joined by John, Lonnie, Frisbee, Blaine Cook, and a team of pastors. We held several meetings to which we invited the people we'd be meeting. After a time of worship, John would teach on the kingdom, and then we'd have a ministry time and pray for healing. During one of these meetings, John had a word of knowledge that God wanted to fill teeth. What? A
What was that
word?
last part again?
John had a word of knowledge that God wanted to fill teeth. Yeah, that's what it says. Bef-
Oh, all right. Let's keep reading. Maybe we'll find out once we get past this part.
Before the meeting, our team had met with John, and he shared that he believed God would do miracles that night. Donna walked away praying, "Lord, I want to see a miracle." There were many lower income people in attendance who couldn't afford regular dental care, and there was a huge response to the word. One gentleman who appeared well off came forward. He was an Afrikaans man, wearing slacks and a sport coat. My 19-year-old bride and I asked to pray with him, and he explained that he had no teeth in the back of his mouth and believed that God would give him new teeth. My first reaction was that wasn't the word, that the word was for fillings, not new teeth. My second reaction was, this is way above my pay grade. However, my lovely, faith-filled wife immediately responded that she would pray for him. I'm not sure who suggested it, but the idea was floated that she should put her fingers in his mouth, lay hands on his gums, and pray. She stands all of 5 foot and 1 inch and had to literally get on her tiptoes. This was not this was now not only above my pay grade, but way out of my comfort zone. After praying for just a minute or two, Donna and the man screamed simultaneously. I thought, my God, he bit her. But what happened was that they both felt popping in his mouth as new teeth formed. Minutes later, she ran over to tell Carol what had happened. Carol's response was like that of a mother looking at her toddler. Well, what do you know? The vineyard's first tooth. Over the years, the enemy has a way of creeping in and sowing doubt. Did that really happen? We were in several vineyard meetings and conferences over the years when someone, usually John, shared that story. Donna would always say, "Oh no, not the tooth story." We both wondered what had really happened. It seemed so long ago, so distant and unreal. In 1997, we attended the 20th anniversary celebration of the Anaheim Vineyard. Our old friend Costa Mitchell, the pastor of the Johannesburg Vineyard, was one of those asked to speak. Costa began to talk about how his church started back in 1982 when a group of young Californians came and shared their faith in the streets of Johannesburg. Then he said that not long ago, a man came up to him and asked, "You're Costa Mitchell, pastor of the vineyard, right?" "Yes, I am," he replied. The man said, "I've been looking for you for a long time. In 1982, I was at a meeting of your church, and a little American girl put her fingers in my mouth and prayed that God would give me new teeth, and he did. I've been wanting to tell you thank you. My life hasn't been the same since." Another of John's sayings was, "Believe your beliefs and doubt your doubts." We'll look at that a little more later, but for now, just remember that when the enemy comes in and sows doubt, it's a lie. What's true is Jesus, his word, and the reality that the meat really is in the street. That was chapter 2.
Wait, it finished already?
Yeah, these chapters aren't that long. Let me is there
Yeah.
a way to
I'm just
is there a way to pull up the table of contents?
well, does it have a table of contents?
Yeah, this is on Kindle, so
Oh, okay. Wow. It's just funny because the last book, I think it took us at least like what was it, 40 minutes to get through a chapter? This one I feel like it's taking like half the time, maybe even less than that.
this
Which
has
I don't mind.
yeah, these I think these chapters are shorter, but there's a lot of them. There's 37 chapters.
Ooh, okay. They got plenty of stuff. Then that could last us. Oh, that's gonna last a bit. That's great. Um, I think this combined with my usual presentations, we'll be in a good spot for the show. Yeah, you got this, guys. We got some great stuff coming up. Okay, yeah. So I guess since we have a little bit of time before we hit towards, I just want to quickly reflect on just the whole teeth thing because it's like it's crazy, right? Like first they hear a thing about like God wants to give teeth, which sounds so weird out of context. Like, I think it just doesn't makes like no sense on paper. Then they meet a guy who's missing teeth. Then the wife puts her fingers in the dude's mouth, praying while this is going on. Despite being sure, lo and behold, he gets a brand new set of teeth, and his life just completely changes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not, and it's like it seems out there, but I mean, I've seen things in my own life that it's like, of course this can happen. I mean, there was the time that there was the time that God sent an angel to stop me from crossing the street too early and prevented me from getting hit by a car. And that's just the stuff. There's the time that God spoke to me in the hospital and got me to trust the doctors when I was having a nervous breakdown. And that's just the stuff I know about. I'm sure that there's stuff that God has done in my life that I am not aware of that's just as miraculous.
That's the thing about miracles. So I know in the book the lady's like was praying for miracle, but in actuality, the truth is miracles happen around us like all the time. In fact, they happen so frequently we don't even notice it at the time. There were multiple instances where I almost got into an accident, but it just never happened for whatever reason. And more recently, I was at the gas station. Because the thing is, this gas station's it's not my hometown; it's in the town next door. I stopped by there because their gas is a little cheaper. So I put up the thing, then went to get a donut because there's a Dunkin' Donuts in the gas station. So I got myself a double chocolate donut. It was great, by the way. I threw it out. While I was trying to throw it out so I could leave the station, the problem is I missed the trash can, so it fell on the opposite side of the thing. So I went over to pick it up and got the thing. And right as I was getting up, a car flew right past me as I was about to throw it out. So, like, had I been down for even a second longer, I could have died that day. But I didn't.
Yeah.
And praise be to God for that.
And then there was the time that I was bit by a brown recluse and it didn't lead to my foot becoming necrotic. That was I recently learned how the brown recluse venom actually works, and if that thing had bitten me anywhere else, it would have been a real problem. It probably would have necessitated a limb being amputated.
Whoa! And he said, "Bit you where on the foot?"
Yeah, on the top of my right foot, the same place that got bit by that rattlesnake some years back.
Yeah, I know with the rattlesnake, there's a chance that it can like not be poisonous, or
Yeah,
what's
a
that the
dry
brown
bite.
snake?
But
Ah, right,
but
right.
in the case of the brown recluse, my flesh was actually dissolving. Um, when I went to the hospital the morning after I got off of work, they said they examined it and they said, well, it looks like your flesh is actually repairing itself faster than it is disintegrating. We're just gonna sink this in some iodine, put some ointment on a band-aid and put that on you. And I'm like, are you guys serious? I have a giant hole in my foot, and you're just gonna put a band-aid on it? Okay, guess I'm gonna. And and then lo and behold, like within like a few days, the skin of my foot was back to normal. It was crazy to think about.
I knew a woman who had like I think it's like a lump or something. It looked like it was like I think it was a breast cancer or something, but it was only stage one, so I hadn't gotten mad yet. But like 1 minute, it looked like it was progressing into stage two. But then when they checked in but then they had like a intense prayer session. Then when they came in the very next day, it was now in remission. Like it was now shrinking.
Yeah, I've heard stories about how people will like see a light and feel a presence on them before going into spontaneous remission. It's very interesting because it's happened to people who were not Christians too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and you know what? I know Jesus did a lot of healing throughout the Gospels, such as healing the sick, giving sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, things like that. But I think the Gospel of John puts it best, where it's like Jesus didn't do these miracles to be praised. He did these miracles to demonstrate God's love for us. That like on our own we won't be able to do much, but like with God's grace, we could do anything. And he loves us, he cares for us, he wants to be with us, and all we have to do is just reciprocate it and walk with him. And if we do that, that doesn't mean our life's gonna be perfect, we're not gonna have problems, but it does mean that it gets like easier in the sense of like knowing that you're not alone, knowing there's someone watching over you each and every day, knowing that someone rooting for you to succeed. That community of saints that like you're not alone, you know, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I know what the more cynical of you right now tuning in are thinking, and I'm inclined to agree. I wish that miraculous healing was more consistent. I wish we could just call on it any time. I wish it wasn't handed out as on an as needed basis, because that seems to be how it works, based on what I've observed and studied. But the fact that it does happen at all tells me plenty about God's character and his love for us. And it does make me scratch my head why God can't heal doesn't heal all the sicknesses on earth at any time when he very easily could. It makes me wonder, cuz and like the hardest case for me was learning what Sky had gone through, and how that made her sick, and it frustrated me. It made me a little bit angry at God, because it's like, God, why? Why did someone have to go through this? Why can't you make them better? Why won't you make them better? And I never got a sufficient answer.
You know, as tragic as things are, sometimes things are just beyond understanding. You know, we're not going to fully understand why things happen the way we do on this side of eternity. Sometimes we haven't figured out certain things, or why certain things might have played out, or how they did play out, depending on the circumstance. But the good thing is, you know, if we run the race and we make it, we're going to have all the answers to all the questions we could possibly ask. And by the time we get there, it's just going to make sense. But I think the challenge that we have as Christians is, like the book said, to trust in Him and to doubt your doubts. Because doubts are going to come in for various different reasons. What we are called to do is not to give power to those doubts, to not allow them to fester in the mind. Because how we think influences how we act. If we instead trust in spite of the doubts and remember God's promises, just like, you know, and why the Bible always, like in the scriptures, repeats certain events or references different events, it's been to emphasize the role God's played not just today, but throughout the history of the world, throughout biblical history. That God has been with us, is with us right now, and will be with us. We're not gonna lose him.
Yeah.
And even
I'll tell y'all a funny story before we go. This comes from when my younger brother was briefly identifying as a Christian, and I asked him, "So, you end up in heaven, you see God, what's the first thing you do?" And my brother tells me, "I'd look at God, look back at Earth, look at God again, and ask, why?" To be fair, that's probably what a lot of people would do. I find that endlessly funny.
the good thing is, you know, it again what we learn from Revelations, the Earth we know now is not going to last forever. There will be a new Earth someday, and on that Earth, it's going to be much like the Garden of Eve. It's going to be the way it was always been, how it is right now with this darkness and corruption, but a way where we can all live in peace amongst one another and just do God's will without hesitation, and then just spend eternity in peace. And I think that is such a wonderful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see my what one's role is in heaven once reaching the other side of eternity. Heaven
Yeah,
doesn't really have a need for a security guard, or but like I don't know, like when I it was something I was actually thinking about yesterday. It's like, what would my job in heaven be? would it be working on computers like it is here on Earth? It would be kind of cool to be testing perfect machines. Just like that sounds like a cool idea.
Yeah, I think it just depends the job too. I think jobs were like, I think I first of all I think anything involving creation of any kind is safe. So if it's like writing or art or like films, even video games, or even board games, any jobs that's just about creating stuff, I think those will probably be safe because in a perfect world, you could just create as much or as little as you want. There'd be no hesitation there. As for other jobs like security or law enforcement, I don't think those would be necessary because, sin and death would be conquered, or so there'd be no violence on the new Earth, and so any jobs that required like stopping others from harming others wouldn't be needed because people in heaven have no desire to harm one another. That would
Right.
be wished away.
And
So,
as far as we
yeah,
know, the demons don't exist anymore on the other side of eternity either. So, yeah, like some sort of watchman just it's pointless.
yeah, there's no need. We have God. We don't need like Watchmen per se. But yeah, in terms of like non-creative jobs, there's definitely a place for that. Maybe they could have like maybe instead of stores, it'd just be a giant marketplace. You could just walk in, get what you need, and then head on out. Right? There's no need to worry about like stealing because anything you want could be there. All you have to do is just ask for it. You can just pick it up, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. Heaven as a concept raises so many interesting logistical questions. It's fun to speculate about.
Definitely, yeah. But the good thing is, once if we run the race and make it there, we're gonna have, like I said, we're gonna have all those answers there. We're gonna understand what it's really like to be there once we get there.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so um, I guess the point of today's episode is, don't lose hope, don't give up. If you're in a rough spot, whether it's unemployment, you're suffering some kind of addiction, or whatever device or struggle you might be going through, just know that God loves you, that He's there for you, that you have brothers and sisters in the faith who are cheering you on, both here on earth and in heaven, and you're gonna make it. You will make it. As long as you cling to Him, you will make it.
Yes. I will disconnect the call and we will start up worship.
Alrighty.
There we go. Activate the display. Documents. Worship songs. Oh, do I not have... I don't have the slides for Because He Lives yet. I need to fix that. Oh well. We will start with Earthen Vessels. We hold a treasure not made of gold in earthen vessels, wealth untold. One treasure only, the Lord, the Christ, in earthen vessels. Light has shone in our darkness. God has shone in our hearts with the light of the glory of Jesus the Lord. We hold a treasure not made of gold in earth. and treasure only the Lord, but Christ in earthen vessels.
That was Earthen Vessels. Our second song for worship is going to be Go Make a Difference.
Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. We are the salt of the earth, called to let the people see the love of God for you and me. We are the light of the world, not to be hidden but be seen. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. We are the hands of Christ reaching out to those in need. The face of God for all to see. We are the spirit of hope. We are the voice of peace. So go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. So let your love shine on, let it shine for all to see. Go make a difference in the world. And the Spirit of Christ will be with us as we go. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference in the world.
That was Go Make a Difference. Our third song for worship today is going to be Holy Now by Peter Mayer.
When I was a boy each week, on Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest, and he would read the holy word, and
consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still, and now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything, everything, everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. Now I have to hold my breath, like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but now I'll get with the reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Questioning child's face, say it's not a testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, and say it's not a sacrament, I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then, 'cause everything is holy now. Used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-downs. Now I'll get with the reverend air, 'cause everything is holy now. That was Holy Now by Peter Mayer. Our next song is going to be King of Kings. Oh boy, gotta scroll through my music folder to get it. Here we are. And King of Kings. Do you believe in God? Do you accept His mercy? Or is He just a fairy tale? Is Christ a fake or fraud? Or is He true and worthy? Is He the one you choose to hail? He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He died at Calvary so we could live forevermore. Sometimes we all have doubts, and many times we're empty. But there's a constant that we need. When love is all about protecting and defending, there isn't room for our own greed. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He died at Calvary so we could live forevermore. And the Lord of Lords. He died at Calvary so we could live forevermore. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He died at Calvary so we could live forevermore. That was King of Kings by Stryper. And that brings us to the end of worship today. I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. I'm going to close this in prayer, and then we're going to take a break and be back. Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our transgressions, as we forgive those who've transgressed against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, always and forever. Lord, thank you for this wonderful day, for the opportunity to share our faith with those around us who would listen. Thank you for our brothers and sisters in creation who are not here, who are not present, who have no interest. May they one day be led into your revealing light. May they see you through our eyes and know how much you love them. In your name I pray. Amen. All right. Once again, I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with the To Be Continued podcast. I hope to see you there. Our raid message is going to be God be with you.